Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 253, Thursday, November the 16th, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. A lot of news today. Let's get started. Well, Roy Moore is holding his ground. He's standing firm, keeping quite the poker face and playing quite a game of poker here. His attorney and his campaign manager came out today and made an official statement, and they're sticking to their guns that their boy is innocent. He is maintaining about a 10% lead in the race for that Senate seat in Alabama, and unless something more comes out, I have to assume he's probably going to win that. Now you have Twitch McConnell saying he will not seat Roy Moore if he wins that Senate seat, but that is bullshit. Okay, I've looked into that, and as it turns out, this is some 150-year-old law that was played around with once. But the fact of the matter is, McConnell cannot keep Roy Moore from being seated. Okay? It's not going to happen. And no Republicans really will have the courage, very few will have the courage to back him on that. And even Twitch McConnell will get weak in the knees in trying to do such a thing. If Roy Moore wins that Senate seat, he'll be seated. They might not like it. They didn't like Trump either. He certainly got seated, didn't he? Now, there's some interesting things about this press conference. The attorney for Roy Moore is stating that he's got some problems with this newest accuser and this yearbook thing, where apparently Roy Moore wrote some message to her in a yearbook, which proves he knew her. His claims were that he didn't know her. Okay, so now what they're calling for is to have an handwriting expert examine that yearbook. So now the attorney for Roy Moore is requesting Gloria Allred, who is the attorney for this accuser, the latest female accuser, and he's now requesting that yearbook so that he can have handwriting analysis done on that yearbook. He's also encouraging the media to get their own handwriting experts, and even Miss Allred herself to get handwriting experts. He wants handwriting experts to review that. Now, there's a couple things about this. They'll have to get handwriting from Roy Moore back from 40 years ago, because your handwriting can change over time. So they'll want to get something he wrote 40 years ago to compare that to what's written in that yearbook. But also something that's probably the easiest way to tell if it's a forgery is the fact that they can determine, based on the ink, they can examine the ink, and they can determine whether that ink that was used to write in that yearbook is 40-year-old ink, or if it's newer ink. So I'm sure that they'll analyze the ink as well under a microscope. And I understand from my friends in the related business, you might say, tell me that you can definitely, when you're comparing ink samples from 40 years apart, you can tell. Maybe not so much 6 months or a year or 2 or 5 years, but certainly 40 years. You can certainly tell whether it's 40-year-old ink or new ink. So that's the path that you're taking. He's holding his ground. He's not backing down at all. And it looks like at this point, I don't know if any allegations, if with all that's been dropped on Roy Moore at this point, and again, he may be guilty. I don't know. He may be guilty. I would also do a lie detector test if I were him, and ask his accusers to take lie detector test as well. And of course, the journalists at the Washington Post as well. Have them all take lie detectors, examine this yearbook, and check out the ink samples and see what that tells us. But regardless, I mean, with all that he's taken, to still be holding 10 points lead tells you a lot. That the people down in Alabama, one of two things: either they think he didn't do it, or they think, well, he's a Christian, therefore he's forgiven. God forgives him, I forgive him, he forgives himself, it's all good. What's most important to them is how he's going to vote. How he is going to cast votes in the U.S. Senate as a U.S. Senator. That's what they're worried about. And they don't want that Democrat casting votes in the Senate. They want Roy Moore casting votes in the Senate. Now, I don't know if you saw that little interview with Gloria Allred and Wolf Blitzer, but I watched it. Hard to get through because I can't stand either Wolf Blitzer or Gloria Allred. I'm really surprised, first of all, that the that this accuser would even go to Gloria Allred. I mean, the woman has no credibility whatsoever. She gets involved in these high-profile, salacious cases. She's the ultimate ambulance chaser. And she specializes in high-profile type stuff like this to get media attention. She's a media whore. I mean, she's just... If I were a serious person looking to launch a serious lawsuit or claim like this, she would be the last attorney I would go to. But that's who this woman has chosen to go with, Gloria Allred. Now, Wolf Blitzer, who's no friend of ours, was interviewing her, and he asked her 3 or 4 times in the most direct way he could, would your client be willing to submit the yearbook for handwriting analysis? She would not answer the question. Would not answer the question. He asked her, she danced around it. He asked her a second time, she danced some more. He hit her with it directly between the eyes, tried to shut her down. She still danced around it. He made one final attempt, 4th attempt. She still will not answer the question. What does that tell you? And we know Gloria Allred, what kind of games she will play. And I don't even know that this is just a Democratic ploy. This may be much larger, because who is it that would hate seeing Roy Moore in the Senate even more than the Democrats? The Republicans, the deep state Republicans, Twitch McConnell, John McCain, and all the rest. They would hate Roy Moore worse than the Democrats do. As far as the Democrats are concerned, he's just another conservative vote. But it's much more personal for Twitch McConnell and Senator Magoo. I need to get that Mr. Magoo theme music. Now, I loved Mr. Magoo in the cartoon, but I don't like Senator Magoo. That's something we'll have to work out. Anyway, it's all quite interesting the way this is playing out. And a lot of people have stuck their neck out and come out and made statements. That's why I have not. As I've told you, I don't know if he's guilty or not. I don't know if he did all this stuff or not. I have questions about the accusers. I have questions about him. Until I actually have some evidence, I don't know. And I'll tell you I don't know. I don't even take a guess. I just don't know. But Senator Magoo, Twitch McConnell, Paul Big Ears, Eddie Munster Ryan, and many others have stuck their neck way, way out. What happens if it turns out that Roy Moore is vindicated and proven that this was all a salacious political dirty trick, just like the dossier in Watergate? What if this was just a dirty trick and it's being perpetrated by the Republican deep state establishment? What if it's a Republican dirty trick? But even if we don't find out it's a Republican dirty trick, what if we just find out that Roy Moore is telling the truth and he is vindicated? Think how stupid Twitch and Magoo and Big Ears Ryan are going to look, along with a lot of their friends, including the minister, Ted Cruz, the Canadian New World Order puppet, Ted Cruz. Yep, that's where we are. Welp. In the People's Republic of Ohio, where I live, today, the state of Ohio, the People's Republic, called off an execution of a 69-year-old Alva Campbell because they could not find a suitable vein. Mr. Alva Campbell is, of course, here in Ohio, he was regarded as the poster boy for the death penalty. This guy's a little scumbag. He faked an illness to break out of jail and proceeded to go murder an innocent man in his own home. A very nice man with a good family. Just a regular working class guy. Just a good guy. Got up every day, went to work, raised his family, lived his life the right way. And Alva Campbell brutally murdered him for no reason. What a sick animal. And they could not find a suitable vein. Medical professionals could not find a suitable vein to inject him. They say that he suffers with cancer and other diseases, including heart disease, lung disease, and other diseases. What more do you need? When you got heart disease, lung disease, and cancer, what more disease do you need? Gangrene? They have reset the execution for 2019. if they can't find his veins in 2017, then what makes them think they're going to be able to find his veins in 2019? No, this just means that those liberals up in Columbus bought him some more time. They're hoping he can die of natural causes so he can't be put to death, so they get a victory. Well, he'll cost the taxpayers another $37,000 per year for the rest of the time that he survives, which hopefully won't be long. Now, what they need to do is they needed to give me a call. I'm right here in the People's Republic of Ohio. I'm just down the road from Columbus. It's about a 2-hour drive. I'll make the trip. They need to give me a call. Mike, we got a problem. We can't find a suitable vein to administer the death serum to Mr. Campbell. Why don't you come and give us a hand? I would have been Johnny on the spot. I would have been right there, and I would have brought along a very valuable little high-tech medical tool that I happen to own. It's called a pocket knife. This one here happens to be stainless steel, 440 gauge steel. It's a good one. And serrated edge. And, if I might add, I promise you that quicker than you could say spit, I would find a suitable vein. I can assure you of that. But as a backup, I would have brought along my 40 cal Glock, just in case I couldn't find a suitable vein. But oh, I would have found one. Maybe I'd do both. I'd put one right between his eyes, take him out back, and shoot the son of a bitch. It's exactly what I would do. Problem taken care of. Problem solved. Hey, I was fully authorized to kill for the government for 5.5 years. Trained and authorized. I guess that makes me good, huh? That's right. I don't even need the damn pocket knife or the 40 cal Glock. Give me a number 2 pencil right in the windpipe. I would have taken care of it right there on the table. Can't find a vein? Give me that number 2 pencil. Watch this shit. Problem solved. The execution's been carried out as ordered. Thank you very much. Oh, broke the pencil. Damn. They do need to give me a call. I'll take care of that problem for them. Well, it appears that Glenn Simpson, a Fusion GPS co-founder, was interviewed yesterday, spoke to the House Intel Committee behind closed doors for 7 hours. Last week, his attorney came out and told us he would tell the truth this time. Yes, he's going to testify and tell the truth this time. Well, let's see. We are getting our first leaks about that. So let's take a look at these first 2 leaks. Well, Glenn Simpson is saying that he was upset that the former FBI director, the dishonorable James Comey, reopened the Clinton email investigation just before Election Day. Now, I assume that this comment is in reference to the fact of why he did this dirty dossier. Because he was mad because his girl, the rotten Reverend Crooked Hillary, got shafted by dishonorable James Comey because he reopened the email investigation. That appears to be what he's saying was his excuse for dumping the dirty dossier. Like, okay, well, if Comey can play dirty, I can play dirty too, sort of thing. He's trying to justify why he dropped the dirty dossier, which is full of lies. That is the best he can do, I guess. He also says that he did not verify the dossier before briefing reporters on it during the campaign. Of course, he didn't verify the dossier because Christopher Steele himself has stated that he did not verify the dossier, nor could they. They don't know who the sources are. They don't know who the intermediaries are. They don't know who all the players are. How could they? It was set up that way. Exactly. He brought Christopher Steele over from England to sit down and personally vouch for the dossier to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, and one other paper. And then they passed it along to all their friends. He also did some meetings and some lunches with a couple other journalists while he was in town with Glenn Simpson. The whole point being, using Christopher Steele as the source to get the papers to start running this stuff, and they were both very upset. Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson were upset that none of the papers would run any of this dossier stuff that they were feeding them from the memos. And so, in a way to give some credibility, Glenn Simpson calls up Christopher Steele in England and says, yeah, they won't run. None of these newspapers, I've given all this stuff to them that you're sending me. They won't run it. They don't believe it. They need sources. Why don't you come to the States? I'll set you up with some meetings with these guys at the New York Times, and you can tell them, and maybe they'll start running these stories. But they still wouldn't, because they didn't believe Christopher Steele, and he still couldn't produce any actual evidence. And the New York Times and Washington Post wasn't going to take the stupid risk that BuzzFeed took for the very reason that we see BuzzFeed in the shape they're in today. They're being sued. They're being sued, and that's exactly what would have happened to the Washington Post and the New York Times and all the rest, and they knew it. That's why they didn't publish it. But Glenn Simpson, he's pissed because he's pissed at Comey. You know, he should be thanking Comey right along with the rotten Reverend Clinton, because it was the dishonorable James Comey that let rotten Reverend off the hook. He let her off the hook. I wonder, Mr. Simpson, did it bother you when the rotten Reverend's husband met in that little secret meeting on the tarmac with the Attorney General just 4 days before she was supposed to testify? In that little meeting with the FBI and the DOJ about her activities? Did that bother you, Mr. Simpson? Did it bother you, Mr. Simpson, that the Attorney General made the FBI director refer to the investigation as a matter and not an investigation? Did that bother you? Did that bother you when the rotten Reverend Clinton destroyed 30,000 emails that were under subpoena? She destroyed them with BleachBit, then destroyed devices with hammers, then sent the FBI 13 phones that she used for convenience without the SIM cards? That's called obstruction of justice, Mr. Simpson. Did any of that bother you? Then James Comey, the dishonorable James Comey, comes out to the podium and lays out all her crimes and then exonerates her. Says no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute. Did that bother you, Mr. Simpson? It sure bothered me and everyone else. We're not used to seeing a prosecutor come out and lay out all the crimes that you committed and then let you off the hook. You should have been cheering. Instead, you're upset. You should have been cheering. Guess it didn't bother you, Mr. Simpson, that the rotten Reverend Clinton had hundreds of thousands of emails of classified information that was moved off of government servers onto a private, unsecure, unencrypted server, including 22 SAP programs so secret that we don't even admit they exist. I wonder if that bothered you, Mr. Simpson. You ever heard of a thing called national security? How about her using these cell phones that she was told not to use, her and her staff? Told, don't use them. She used them anyway. In China, in Pakistan, and in Russia. Totally unsecure phones. Did that bother you, Mr. Simpson? I guess we'll learn more as we get more leaks about what happened in that session, but I believe we'll learn much more. He's probably still lying about most things anyway. John Roberts. Remember him? Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who during the Obama hearings, when that issue went to the Supreme Court and it all came down to the mandate of whether or not it was a tax, and Supreme Court Justice Roberts told us that no, it's not a tax. It's all fine. Obamacare is good to go. Enjoy them tripled premiums and them much higher deductibles and the failure of the healthcare system and the calamity that goes along with it. Enjoy all that. Well, now we got John Roberts coming out and saying, hey, the individual mandate, it's a tax. It's a tax. Oh, that's right, folks. I told y'all that, back a couple years ago, I told you that damn individual mandate wasn't a tax. Oh, I was just bullshitting you. I was bullshitting you. It's a tax. Yeah, it's a tax. That's what it is. It's a tax. I bullshitted you, and y'all went for it. And now you got the Obamacare law. Thank you very much, Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. You asshole. We all knew it was a tax back then, but you lied. Now you want to come out and tell the truth. It's a tax. A little late now, isn't it, John? He should be immediately removed from the Supreme Court, castrated, stretched, and quartered, and tried for his crimes. John Solomon over at thehill.com wrote, on October the 23rd, an email was sent to press officials from Rod Rosenstein, press officials of the FBI, saying that the Clinton email probe was under the control of a small group of high-ranking people at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., and was put into what they call special status. I've never heard of special status. Have you ever heard of special status? I've never heard of special status. That's a new one on me. Imagine that. Who do you think it was in this small group of high-ranking people who made that decision? You think it might have been Mr. McCabe? You think it might have been Comey? You think it might have been Loretta Lynch? Do you think it might have been Obama? Ben Rhodes? Susan Rice? The Rotten Reverend? Who do you think? Huh? Let's get this straight one more time. John Solomon would not print this unless he had this actual email. He's obviously got it from the Freedom of Information Act. And I imagine Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch will be right behind him. But apparently they've discovered this email that was sent by Rosenstein to the FBI, which is basically their public relations department, saying that the Clinton email probe was under the control of a small group of high-ranking people at the FBI's headquarters in Washington and was deemed as in a special status. Somebody needs to look into that. Just another one of the many, many, many examples of crime and corruption. Got to wonder what the hell the Obama administration was doing for 8 years. They weren't running the country other than running it into the ground. Appears that all they were doing for the past 8 years was running covert operations against conservatives, libertarians, American people in the Trump campaign. That appears to be what they were doing for the past 8 years. My. Oh well, on a lighter note, North Korea has now sentenced Donald Trump to death for calling Kim Jong-un fat. That's hilarious. You know, there was a thing being written about a couple days ago that these high-level officials from North Korea during Trump's Asia trip were trying to talk to people, you know, higher-level government officials from other governments like Russia and other places to find out, since they actually have talked to Trump, whether or not he's really crazy. Well, let me tell you what. If you sentence someone to death, if your country sentences someone to death for simply calling someone fat, I think it tells us who's really crazy. So the demonic Teletubby is obviously out of his mind, but more importantly, he's scared. And that's exactly what we want. Trump's doing exactly the right thing. I believe it was Richard Nixon who once suggested that he wanted the Russians to think he was crazy enough to drop the bomb. Very good tactical thinking on Trump's part. Because the fact is, Kim Jong-un and his predecessors, his father and grandfather, never believed that we would ever do anything, and they were right. But with Trump, they just don't know. And that's the way you want it. Get him to fall in line. Clean up their act, or else they'd probably be taken out if the Chinese can't pull it off, which they probably can. But if they can't do it, it's just a matter of time. And the clock is ticking on the demonic Teletubby in the Hermit Kingdom. Well, you thought the dossier was bad. You thought Uranium One was worse. You thought that the rotten Reverend Clinton and her crooked peckered husband, Slick Willie, couldn't go any lower than stealing all that money from those poor people after the earthquake down in Haiti. You didn't think they could go any lower than that, right? Wrong. I've got a story for you. And guess who? You remember about 2 weeks ago I told you that at some point the liberal media would turn on the rotten Reverend Clinton and her crooked peckered husband, Slick Willie? Well, an investigative report by CNN proves that the rotten Reverend was personally briefed on this matter. And that was that she was told that if the Libyan government fell, that Libya's black population and migrant workers would be the first to fall victim to genocidal death squads and being sold into slave auctions. If you remember, I did a story back at the end of the summer, back in August, about the middle of the summer, I guess that is. Back in August, I did a story where I reported to you of what was going on in Libya after we destroyed that country. Remember? We came, we saw, he died. Yes, we all remember the Rotten Reverend's war in Libya. She was told, according to CNN, and they've got video, she was told by intelligence and State Department officials that if she went through with this plan in Libya to take down the Libyan government, that the black population and migrant workers would be the first to fall victim to genocidal death squads, and they would be sold into slave auctions. And I reported to you back in August that that's exactly what has happened. Right after the fall of Gaddafi, out came the death squads. Hundreds of thousands of people brutally murdered. Men, women, and children. Doesn't matter. Young and old, sick, healthy, doesn't matter. Death squads. Butchering people with machetes, guns, knives, whatever they can get. Number 2, pencils. Not only that, I reported to you that there's an open slave trade market in Libya right now. Do you think the Rotten Reverend Clinton and her crooked peckered husband, Slick Willie, do you think that they visit Libya to bask in the aftermath of that disastrous war, which is known as Hillary's War? Well, now we have CNN, who've been doing some investigating themselves. They've had this stuff for a long time, friends. This is not new. They're just now dumping it, because now it's convenient for them. They've had this for a long time. We know because the one chick who worked for CNN at the time, who got fired, Amber, what's her name, got fired because she came back with the evidence. And when she tried to go with it, the producers killed it. And then she got into a big legal battle with the producers, and finally they fired her. And then she went public and went on the internet and started telling everybody. They confiscated all of her film, though, and everything she had. But this is exactly what we learned a long time ago. The Rotten Reverend Clinton knew, she was told, what would happen if they took down the Libyan government. The massacre that would occur, and the slavery and all the other things. So when you think the Rotten Reverend Clinton could go no lower than the dirty dossier, Uranium One, and stealing all that money from them people in Haiti, wrong. She can go much, much lower. That's why I call her the Rotten Reverend. Page 2. Well, I've been talking about that FBI undercover informant who was undercover for 4 years in the Uranium One issue. We're now learning that he is going to be testifying in front of Congress before the end of the year. He's getting all his documents and evidence together. And we're talking evidence now, not accusation. Evidence. Hard evidence. Like the following. This FBI undercover informant will produce the evidence before the end of the year in the Uranium One hearings to Congress. He will show and tell members of Congress that he possesses audio recordings of Russian officials talking about using bribery to get favors from the Clintons by giving donations to the Clinton Foundation. This is what one of the many things he's going to show them or tell them, and he's got the evidence, the tapes, to prove it. He's got them on tape. He has got Russian officials talking about using bribery to get favors from the Clintons by giving donations to the Clinton Foundation, and he's got evidence that Robert Mueller, Uncle Bob, knew every bit of it. He'd heard the tapes. He knew everything that was going on. Uncle Bob, looking for that Russian collusion. Well, 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 there's a little Russian collusion for you that he knows all about. And this is what this FBI informant is going to be telling Congress, and he's got the hard evidence. Many people say, well, the Clintons, they get away with everything, they'll never be indicted, blah, blah, blah. Yes, Hillary Clinton is going to be indicted, my friends. It may take 2, 3, 4 years from now, but believe me, when this all shakes itself out, Hillary Clinton will be indicted. Now, does that mean she'll go to jail? I don't know. The Clintons are in their 70s. They have a lot of money. They can probably fight this thing in court till the day they die. But they will die penniless with a lot of debt to a lot of lawyers. They will not be able to stick their head out of their holes. That's what's coming for the Clintons. Remember, Slick Willie was found guilty of perjury. He lost his law license and he was fined $800,000. So you can't say that it's impossible that these people will face justice. They will face justice. At least the Right Reverend Clinton will be indicted. Maybe it's next year, 2 years from now, but believe me, there's no way she can avoid it. No way. Unless, in fact, I wouldn't even say unless. I mean, she's got to be. There's just too much there. This FBI informant, when he drops his information on Congress, they'll have no choice. Sessions will have no choice. He will no longer be able to say, I just don't have enough evidence. I haven't seen enough evidence. There's probable cause for a crime. Oh, you're going to get the probable cause for a crime, my friend. You're going to get the hard-ass evidence is what you're going to get. New York Times reporter, well, I should say from the Ministry of Propaganda, known as the New York Times, one of their most left-wing reporters, Michelle Goldberg, has written an op-ed which is blowing everybody's lid in Washington. The title of her op-ed, I Believe Juanita Broaddrick. For those of you who don't remember, Juanita Broaddrick was one of the many victims of Slick Crooked Peckered Willie, Slick Willie Clinton. Unlike many of the other people who just claim that he groped them or forced himself or did this or did that, sexual, misconduct type things, Juanita Broaddrick, her story is that he actually physically, violently raped her. Violently raped her. And now we have one of the most liberal columnists at the Ministry of Propaganda at the New York Times writing an op-ed saying she believes Juanita Broaddrick is telling the truth. That Slick Willie, Crooked Peckered Slick Willie, forcibly, violently raped her. Read it for yourself. Just Google Michelle Goldberg, I Believe Juanita Broaddrick. Read the article for yourself. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's TowerGate for day 253, is it? Is that where we are? I do believe. Yes, it's day 253, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow for Fun Friday. See ya.